Hey, what's up? My name is Daniela and welcome to a new video. So in today's video I will be recommending you some books by Black authors. It is currently February, and February is the month where a lot of people tend to talk more about books by Black author. It is the Black History Month in the US. For me, as a European, it might make more sense to make this in October because that is the month where Black History Month is celebrated in the UK. But the point I'm trying to make in the title of this video and the whole video is that there is no one perfect time to read books by Black authors and to talk about them. So I'm just making this video now, and I'm making this mid-February, so there is high chance that there is no more space on your February TBR. But don't despair, because you can read these books anytime during the year. With that being said, let's jump into the recommendations. So I have divided these into genres, so I believe that there should be anything for everyone. And let's talk about some romance recommendations first. So the first one I have is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. So this is an adult second chance romance. We have two authors, Eva and Shane, and Eva is an erotica writer and Shane is a literary writer. And these two met as teenagers when they were both dealing with very complicated situations at home regarding abuse, substance abuse and stuff like that, and they instantly connected when they met, but then something happened and they lost touch, and now as adults they meet again at a literary event. And yeah, they start exploring if maybe there could be something between them. Second chance romance might not always be my favorite, but there's just something about when two people met and were crazy about each other, and then because of circumstances it couldn't work out, and now they have the second chance. So yeah, it really warms my heart. I love the chemistry between these two, and I also loved how their writing also kind of had an element connected to the love story. There is a lot of discussion in this one about the publishing industry and how writers are treated differently sometimes based on which genre they write. There's also disability rep because Eva has migraines. She's also a single mother, and actually Tia Williams released a new book in 2025 that is called Audrey and Bush Are Just Friends, and one of the main characters of that one is Eva's daughter. So it is a young adult book, and I'm quite interested to read that one too. And with the second romance I have on this list, you might know that it is one of my favorite romance books because I talked about it quite a lot, and it is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi. In this book we follow an artist named Faye, and her husband died 5 years ago, and now she is trying to date again. She meets a man, but she's taking it very slow with him, and then she meets another man, and this one is a bit of a forbidden romance. It is not like taboo or anything like that, but the circumstances are not ideal for them to have a romance, and yet they do, obviously. And it is delicious, it is beautifully written, it is messy, it is lush with the descriptions of nature and food and human connections, and yeah, it is just an amazing book. I also love seeing the bits about Faye's art and the relationship she had with her best friend. I liked how the main couple treated each other. Next, let's talk about some contemporary books that maybe are blended a little bit with other genres. So the first one is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. So this is a book that is kind of half contemporary and half sci-fi, but when I categorized it for my spreadsheet purposes, I put it into a contemporary because I felt like that was the main vibe, even though like half of the book is basically sci-fi. So in this book we follow Zelu, who is an author and a teacher, and she is down on her luck because she has just been fired, and also her manuscript is not being accepted. So she's kind of at a crossroad, and out of her despair she creates a manuscript that is bold and risky, and this book, once it is discovered, changes everything. So the part of the book that is the sci-fi part are excerpts from Zelu's book, and although they were interesting, I much prefer the contemporary present time storyline, and in that some sci-fi elements kind of start seeping into Zelu's life. But yeah, don't expect the contemporary part of that to be like super sci-fi, because it's really mostly about Zelu as a character and her relationships to other people and her career and all of that. Zelu is disabled, she uses a wheelchair, and in this book there is a lot about disability, how Zelu interacts with it and how other people interact with it. It's a lot about how her family treats her, how she becomes rich and famous after her book is released, and how that changes or doesn't change some things. As I said, I mostly enjoyed this book for the characters and their relationships, but with the sci-fi stuff there is also a part where it becomes a little bit mind-bendy, where you really have to think about what it actually means, and I also really enjoyed that element. And then the second book in the contemporary section is Mr. Loverman by Bernardine Evaristo. So this is straight up contemporary with some flashbacks to the history of what happened in these people's lives. We follow our main character called Barry, who is 74, and he was born in Antigua. He found a wife there. They moved to London, have been living here the whole life, but the twist is that he is actually gay and he has been having an affair with his best friend for their whole lives, and now the truth might finally come out, and we will see what that will mean for his marriage and for his relationship with his kids, and also what it will mean for his relationship with his lover, who is named Morris, because as you can imagine, it's a bit of a complicated situation. Barry is a grumpy main character who is also very much misogynistic, unfortunately, and also has some internalized homophobia, so it wasn't always super pleasant to hear his words or his thoughts. But even though he was a bit of an unlikable character, I utterly enjoyed this book. It is amazingly written. It talks about queerness in different ages and different eras and in different cultures. It talks about life in London and how it has changed for some people. It talks about what it's like to be in a relationship your whole life where you don't love the other person, but you're also afraid to go after what you want. And from the other side, from Barry's wife point of view, is that she has been in this unhappy relationship and she knew her whole life obviously that something was wrong, but she never knew what exactly. And listen, I really wasn't drawn to this book, even though I enjoyed Girl, Woman, Other by this author, because I'm not usually drawn to books about old grumpy men, but I will just tell you, it is that good and you should read it. Let's jump into a whole different book format for a bit, because I want to talk about one of my favorite graphic novels out there, and it is Wash Day Diaries by Jamila Roser and Robin Smith. This is a graphic novel with the most gorgeous color scheme and art. And in this graphic novel we follow 4 friends who live in Bronx. And yeah, we get 4 parts about each of them. They are a very close-knit community, which is the aspect I loved so much about this one. But I also love that we learn about their individual struggles and joys, and then how they are together as a group, how they support each other. These women deal with different things like career, relationships, complicated relationship to a family member, living with depression, dealing with an abusive ex, and it is all tied together with the topic of hair care. So even though it deals with some tough topics, it is so heartwarming and also joyful at times, so you should definitely read it if you want to read an absolute delight of a graphic novel. Switching it back to some literary and historical fiction, we have The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This book takes place in Georgia in the interbellum period, and we follow a young woman called Celie who was abused in her home, and now she's being abused by her husband. So her life living in poverty and around abusive people is very tough, but everything changes for her when she meets a woman who is a singer, who has traveled around and who has come to her own, and with her help Celie also starts to exploring her identity, both like sexual identity, because she finds out that she is quite attracted to this woman, and also generally who she is as a person, what she wants and what she wants to do in the world. This whole book is told in letters, and the majority of them are exchange of letters between Celie and her sister who went to Africa, and for the majority of this book they are separated. And even though I didn't enjoy the sisters part of the story that much, I was really invested in their relationship as sisters and, you know, was rooting for them to be reunited. I've been quite intimidated to read this book because I didn't know what exactly to expect, and it is a tough read at times, but I can say that it is an absolute must read, both when it comes to the Black representation and also the Celtic representation. And then the other historical fiction that I would very much recommend is The Underground Railroad by Colston Whitehead. And I was even more intimidated to read this book because historical fiction is usually not my jam, and this one I knew is going to be very tough to read, but I am so glad that I gave it a chance because I really appreciated it. So this book takes place in the 19th century in Georgia on a plantation, and we follow Cora, who is now an orphan. She is alone in this environment. One day she is invited by another slave there to escape, and that's what they do. So we follow Cora's journey up north as she's trying to escape, but there is one man who is a slave catcher who is very much set on catching her because in the past her mom also escaped the plantation and this man wasn't able to catch her. So we have this chase and run, and yeah, it is heart-wrenching. Even though this book is written in a bit of a detached style, I very much cared about the characters, and yeah, I really wanted to know what was going to happen with them. And another element I also liked was the Underground Railroad, because in this book the Underground Railroad is a physical thing, so they're actually the trains and the tunnels, and that was just such an interesting element. So I would really recommend this book, even though there are really some horrific scenes. It's not all doom and gloom, so if you want to give it a try, I would recommend it. And the last section I have is the non-fiction section, and I have 3 very different books in 3 different subsections of non-fiction. And the first one is What White People Can Do Next by Emma Dabiri. So this is a very little book. It has 150 pages. It is an essay-based book, but it packs so much in these 150 pages. But it doesn't talk about only racial injustice, it also talks about how it interacts with other issues. So I definitely need to reread this book to refresh the ideas in my mind, but a couple of them that have stuck with me. One of them is, which is the subtitle, From Allyship to Coalition. So it talks about how sometimes allyship can be kind of othering, and coalition might be a better approach to think about it. Then it also talked about coalition between marginalized groups, that includes low-income people, and how improvements for one marginalized group can positively affect other marginalized groups. And another thing that also stuck with me is discussions about the language element of activism. So as someone who studied linguistics and who also has a bit of a literal thinking, I'm always thinking about linguistics and how language shapes everything around us, but it is true that sometimes we might get too absorbed in the linguistics nitty-gritty and it might distract from the big picture. And also language is ever evolving, so our perception of what like bad and wrong or correct terminology is also changes constantly. As I said, it just packs so much in this little book, and if you want to read a book on this topic, I think you should definitely give this one a try. Then I have one poetry collection on this list, and that is The Perseverance by Raymond Antrobus. I don't read that much poetry these days, but this collection I enjoyed. So Raymond Antrobus is a black, deaf, British Jamaican man, and the poems in this collection explore his life with these identities. It talks a lot about being a black deaf man in London, and it also talks about some events that happened in the deaf community. The style is very raw and straightforward, and there are also some notes, so you will learn a lot from this collection. And lastly, I have a memoir here. So the memoir is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. So I don't really watch comedians. I have never seen Trevor Noah perform any of his shows, so I can't say I was really interested in him as a celebrity, but I think that it is a sign of an amazing memoir where I pick up a book. I don't know anything about this person, I am not a fan or anything, but still it manages to hook me and to be there from minute one to the last minute and be utterly invested. I listened to the audiobook, which I think is really the way to go, because the way he performs it, including the different dialects and, you know, playing the different characters, well, characters, the people in his life, you know what I mean. So it was an amazing experience. He talks about his growing up in South Africa, about his family, his friends, his schooling, all the people that he met there, the different cultures, different social classes. It is fascinating and it is highly entertaining, so I would very much recommend it, even if you're not a fan, because I wasn't and I still very much enjoyed it. So those were my recommendations of books by Black authors. Let me know what some of your favorite books by Black authors are in the comments. And remember to read books by Black authors all year round. Like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye!